Hi everyone, so thanks for staying, and we'd like to begin in a good way as well and express our gratitude and acknowledge the unceded and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples on whose territories we're here today. We're thankful for this opportunity to be here and share our work, and I also want to take a minute to put my hands up and hold my hands up for the stories that were shared in the room today. Yeah, they're just very meaningful and setting a very good tone. So we can begin by introducing ourselves.
My name's Amy Perreault.
I'm Janey Liu. I'm an educational developer in the Center for Teaching, Learning, and Technology at UBC.
I'm the strategist for Aboriginal initiatives at the Center for Teaching, Learning, Technology, but I'm also, in my other life, a part-time student in the First Nations concentration at UBC in Slace. So it's really an honor to be here amongst future colleagues, hopefully. Yes, so thank you. And the stories that were shared were really meaningful, so thank you.
And I wanted to mention also, thanks to Sarah earlier, she invited us to come speak with you today, and then also to acknowledge the relationship that UBC has with Musqueam, and we really honor that relationship in particular. We're very grateful for the relationship that our team has with Musqueam. A lot of the work we do in Aboriginal initiatives at CTLT is guided by and worked through in consultation with a Musqueam advisory. So our work wouldn't be possible without that ongoing relationship, and we really value it. Thank you.
So, and I just also want to say, Lindsay's gone, but her stories were really meaningful for me. I come from mixed Métis heritage on my father's side and mixed European ancestry on my mother's side, and being an Aboriginal student in Slace is an experience. I think it's getting better, but it being in there and in it, yeah, it's helped me think and reflect on a lot of today and Lindsay's story, so thank you. That's okay. So I just want to talk about this quote and then also talk a little bit about what we do in Aboriginal initiatives at CTLT. So this is a video of Justice Murray Sinclair. Have any of you seen this? He talks about what is reconciliation. Oh, it's a great video. This was one of the quotes that resonated from this video for me was the one that's up here. It was an educational system that has contributed to this problem in this country, and it's the educational system we believe that's going to help us to get away from this. And this was a video that in the work that we do at CTLT, we facilitate a lot of workshops and dialogue around ways that Indigenous issues are brought up in the classroom. We look at classroom climate and how instructors navigate difficult conversations in the classroom. One of the other things that we had the privilege of doing was when the TRC, when the Day of Suspended Classes was coming at UBC, we were, well, you weren't there yet. I was asked to facilitate workshops with faculty and just get a sense from them about ways that they might approach this day of suspended classes. How were they going to prepare their students to engage in this respectfully and thoughtfully? And I would start a lot of those workshops off with this video of Justice Murray Sinclair. It's a really great video to bring into the classroom as well. And what I think was really impactful was the opportunity to have conversations with faculty and staff who never really thought much about Indigenous issues and how those intersected with what they taught about and what they do. It was, for some people, I remember coming up with a lot of resistance when I was going in. They were like, well, what am I going to do in my class? And so I said, well, let's talk about that. What are you going to do in your class? And so it was an interesting experience. It was definitely, in my role as a strategist, an opportunity to open doors that had not been opened before. So reflecting back on that day and on our conversations today, I think I'm really glad to see that this event is happening. I'm glad to hear about all the amazing work that's happening in and around this.
So we are asked here to talk about supporting the indigenization of higher education in BC. And We work in a fairly small team within a large unit on campus that provides campus-wide services to UBC, as you know, like a very large decentralized university. And what we focus on is, as Amy said, encouraging engagement with Aboriginal issues and how to negotiate that content in the classroom. We also have colleagues that run course design workshops specifically at the Center for Teaching, Learning, and Technology, and they'd been asking us to do Indigenous-focused workshops on course design. And we recently actually also did a workshop with the School for Library, Archival, and Information Studies on a faculty development workshop that brings together issues of course design and integrating Indigenous content. But we're not course design specialists, and the term indigenization as well, I'm a Chinese Canadian settler, second generation, and my background is a PhD in critical and comparative ethnic studies. I work a lot on sort of decolonizing education, but as a non-Indigenous person, I think about indigenization, but I don't speak from that as an expert at all. And our team doesn't work from being experts. We work with experts across the university, and we try to facilitate these conversations. So when we've been asked to do these indigenization of course design workshops, we have been approaching them in a much more exploratory way, I guess. There was a call for a festival recently called the BC Festival of Learning. It's a large festival for educational developers across the province and educators. And we were asked to do this workshop on indigenizing course design. We wanted to, like I said, not come in as the experts on this topic, but we sort of flipped it around and said, okay, we're interested in these questions, but we'll come and do the workshop if we're allowed to do it in an exploratory, investigative way. We want to know what other people are doing. We want to find out from other folks in other institutions across the province, how are you approaching these questions, and to kind of ask some critical questions and share a bit of our work. So that's really how we work. We ended up partnering, which we like to do. We like to work collaboratively with others, with a colleague at UBC Okanagan who is experienced in course design and has had an interest in indigenizing curriculum. So we designed this exploratory workshop that drew on the participants' experiences, knowledge, and expertise in order to explore a lot of broad questions around what indigenizing curriculum means and what different approaches to it, methods that people are taking. So these were actually the objectives from our workshop. And as you can see, we took it from a couple of very broad categories. So we wanted to address issues of knowledge gaps. We find that in talking with faculty across UBC, one of the major issues is how do we bridge knowledge gaps that students and instructors bring to learning about Indigenous issues. I think Justin was the one that mentioned meeting students where they are, and we think that's a really key component of working with faculty, staff, and students across the campus on integrating Indigenous issues. Another topic that we talk about a lot in our work is social location, not just student social location when they come in the classroom and social location in terms of differences among students, but then also the significance of instructor social location. We've seen that practiced a lot with the speakers in the room today, so I really think that that's already been modeled for us. And the third thing that we talked about when we were approaching this workshop was to ask questions of the participants in terms of how are you in thinking about Indigenizing curriculum, also integrating questions of the histories of place and location where you are. So we think that there's a large value in acknowledging the specific geographies and histories of places where our teaching and learning takes place and is grounded, and especially when we're thinking across disciplines about how to integrate Indigenous content. So we always locate what we're doing in the places where we are.
We had actually a really great response to our session, which told us that people are really hungry to have these conversations. They're looking for spaces to be talking about this, thinking about this. Some people were nervous because they'd been tasked to do this within their own institutions. So we limited the workshop to about 20 people. We wanted it to be more of an intimate conversation, exploratory session with people. So there was 20 educators from multiple post-secondary institutions across BC. We had some folks from Alberta, University of Saskatchewan. So we really got a nice mix of faculty, instructional designers, educational developers, higher level administrators. I think there was a dean or two in the mix. So really broad interests and experiences in the room. There were people at the beginning of the session that wanted the plan. They walked in and they said, so, like, nice to meet you, what's the plan? How do I indigenize? And I was like, oh, crap. Like many of the workshops that we do, we ask a lot of questions and we open the nut up a lot and crack it wide open. And for some people that works really well. Some people are a little anxious about that. They want to leave with something when they leave the workshop. So we're always working with that dynamic in the work that we do. Yeah, like Janey said, it was more exploratory, and we were really drawing from where we're coming from, our knowledge base and expertise, what we do. Because I don't know if any of you have heard of flexible learning or any of the other buzzy kind of words that float around post-secondary institutions. I remember when flexible learning came in and I was thinking, we've been doing this in different capacities for a long time. It's just now being called flexible learning. So when I'm thinking about indigenizing, I was thinking like, we've been doing a lot of this work already. So let's talk about the work that we are doing.
So in addition to asking the questions in the workshop, what we did was we demoed a few of the resources that we've developed over time in Aboriginal initiatives. So for example, around knowledge gaps, and this is something that Sarah mentioned earlier, we showed two resources. One is actually a video that was produced by a First Nations and Indigenous Studies alumna. Her name is Muriel Sparks Cardinal, and it's a video that's posted on the Aboriginal portal at UBC called Ignorance or What? And in relation to that, we also demoed the Indigenous Foundation's website, it's like an informational resource that's really helpful. We find that we can refer people to when there are foundational questions that people don't know. A lot of times if you ask someone, have you ever heard of the Indian Act? The answer might be something like, I've heard of it. I don't really know much about it, and things like that. So questions around Indigenous histories, politics, cultures, and also sort of global Indigenous issues that are addressed in Indigenous foundations. And it was a website that was developed by the First Nations Studies program as a collaboration between students in the program as well as faculty, and provides very sort of accessible, user-driven, short articles that help answer some of these questions.
And then one of the other areas that we were talking about was social location in course design and how that's so important. So we showed a little bit of the project What I Learned in Class Today, Aboriginal Issues in the Class. And this was a project that I co-developed with Carmen Cray when we were undergraduate students in the First Nation Studies program. Very briefly, we, as Aboriginal students, who were in First Nation Studies, but then would go out to other courses with Indigenous content. We were finding some of the conversations in those classes highly problematic. And so our instructor, Link Kessler, at the time said, you should really archive your experiences as a way to see where the university is at in engaging with Indigenous issues. So we interviewed our classmates, we interviewed Indigenous faculty and faculty that teach Indigenous topics. And so this is a resource that's freely available, open. There's videos. There's the video Students Speak, which is a great way to start a workshop or a class. There's discussion modules, workshop models, etc.